I watched my mother slip the powder into my drink. She didn't hesitate. She didn't tremble. She just stirred the champagne and smiled, waiting for me to take a sip and die. I didn't run. I walked right up to her, took the glass, and turned to my sister. Madison. To the sister who deserves everything I have, I said. I handed her the poisoned glass, and she drank it. Before I tell you what happened the moment that glass touched her lips, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from tonight. Have you ever known someone who smiled to your face while holding a knife behind their back? I hadn't spoken to my parents in 6 months. Not since the day I cracked their server password and found the $40 million hole in the family foundation's ledger. I didn't confront them then. I didn't scream. I just packed my bags, changed my number, and vanished. I thought I was free. But then the invitation arrived. Heavy cream cardstock, gold embossed lettering, demanding my presence at the Newport Yacht Club for a family reconciliation gala. It was a trap. I knew it before I even opened the envelope. My mother, Sandra, doesn't do reconciliation. She does acquisition. And right now, she needed to acquire the only thing standing between her and federal prison. My signature. See. They forgot who I became after they cast me aside. I wasn't just Charlotte, the disappointing daughter, anymore. I was 25. A forensic analyst who spends her days auditing cartels and dismantling corporate fraud. I see patterns where others see chaos. And the pattern here was obvious. The foundation was being audited by the IRS. They needed cash to fill that $40 million void. And the only liquid asset left was the $25 million trust fund my grandmother left specifically to me. They couldn't touch it unless I died or signed it over. But why invite me to a party? Why not just forge my signature like they did everything else? That's when I realized the darker truth. It wasn't just about the money. It was about utility. In a malignant family system, the scapegoat isn't exiled because they are unlovable. They are kept on a leash because they are necessary. The scapegoat is the vessel for the family's sins. My parents didn't just need my money. They needed a tragedy. An IRS audit is a scandal. But a grieving family mourning the accidental overdose of their troubled, estranged daughter? That buys sympathy. That buys time. That halts investigations out of respect for the family's loss. They didn't invite me to Newport to make amends. They invited me to be the body they could cry over while they cashed the check. I sat in my office, the invitation resting on my desk next to the forensic report of their crimes. I felt a cold kind of clarity wash over me. If I didn't go, they would keep hunting me. They would send lawyers, private investigators, maybe even hitmen. There was only one way to end this. I had to give them exactly what they wanted. I called my lawyer. I didn't ask for a restraining order. I asked him to draft a disclaimer of inheritance. It's a legal nuclear bomb that irrevocably rejects a bequest, passing it automatically to the next in line, in this case, my parents and Madison. I signed it 3 days before the party. I waived my right to the $25 million. I gave it all to them. But here's the thing about inheriting an asset that is inextricably linked to a fraudulent foundation. You don't just inherit the cash. You inherit the liability. By signing that money over, I wasn't giving them a gift. I was handing them the deed to a burning building and locking the doors from the outside. I packed my bag. No dress, just a hidden camera rigged into a brooch, and the signed documents tucked into my clutch. I wasn't going to a party. I was going to a crime scene. I parked my 12-year-old sedan between a Rolls-Royce and a Bentley. The valet looked at my car like I'd just vomited on his shoes. But he took the keys. I didn't care. I wasn't here to impress anyone. I walked into the Newport Yacht Club carrying nothing but a small clutch. Inside that clutch wasn't lipstick or a compact mirror. It was the future of the family foundation. Neatly folded and notarized, the ballroom was on the 2nd floor. I could hear the music drifting down the grand staircase. A live string quartet, playing something Vivaldi would have hated. I checked my appearance in the lobby mirror. I wasn't wearing a gown. I was wearing a black jumpsuit, sharp and tailored. It looked like armor. Pinned to the lapel was a vintage brooch my grandmother had given me years ago. It looked like costume jewelry. A gaudy swirl of gold and glass. But the glass was a high-definition lens, and the gold housed a microphone and a transmitter. I tapped the brooch twice. A tiny vibration against my chest confirmed it was recording. My parents taught me this. They taught me that appearances are everything, and reality is negotiable. They taught me to smile while I suffered. But they forgot that I learned other things, too. I learned how to track shell companies through the Cayman Islands. I learned how to recover deleted emails. I learned that every crime leaves a digital fingerprint if you know where to look. Tonight, I wasn't just walking into a party. I was walking into an interrogation room. And I was the only one who knew the cameras were rolling. I took a breath, centered myself, and started up the stairs. Every step felt heavy, like walking underwater. My body remembered the fear, even if my mind was cold. This was the place where I was supposed to be erased. They had planned this night down to the minute. The tragic accident, the tearful press conference, the closed casket funeral. They had already written the script. I was just here to rewrite the ending. I reached the top of the stairs and paused. Through the double doors, I could see them. Sandra, in shimmering silver, holding court near the bar. Robert laughing with a senator, his hand on Madison's shoulder. They looked perfect. They looked untouchable. They looked like people who had gotten away with everything. I pushed the doors open and stepped inside. The air conditioning hit me first, then the smell of expensive perfume and old money. Heads turned. Whispers started. I saw Sandra's eyes find me across the room. For a split second, her smile faltered. Just a flicker of annoyance, maybe even fear. Then it was gone, replaced by the mask of the doting mother. She started walking toward me, arms open, ready to welcome the lamb to the slaughter. I smiled back. Come on, Mom, I thought. Let's dance. The room was a Shark Tank in silk and tuxedos. I moved through the crowd, accepting hollow compliments and air kisses from people who hadn't called me in 5 years. They looked at me with that specific blend of pity and curiosity reserved for the family failure. I let them look. I let them think I was the prodigal daughter returning for a handout. My father, Robert, didn't hug me. He cornered me near the bar. He leaned in, smelling of scotch and expensive cologne, blocking my exit with his shoulder. I saw that heap the valet tried to hide behind the hedges, he said. His voice was low, smooth, designed to cut without leaving a mark. It's embarrassing, Charlotte. But don't worry. Tonight marks the end of the struggle. He smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. It was a predator's smile. He wasn't talking about buying me a new car. He was talking about the end of my life. He looked at me like I was a sick dog he was about to put down out of mercy. You'll be at peace soon, he whispered, patting my arm. I didn't flinch. I'm sure I will, Dad, I said. I'm sure tonight changes everything. He walked away, satisfied, thinking he'd just given me a comforting lying-in-state speech. Then Sandra descended. My mother doesn't walk. She glides. She was wearing a silver gown that cost more than my college tuition. She reached out and tucked a stray hair behind my ear. Her fingers were ice cold. You look tired, darling, she cooed, loud enough for the senator's wife next to us to hear. Doesn't she look exhausted, Helen? Like she's just ready to rest. Ready to rest. They were already writing the eulogy. They were planting the seeds for the police report. She was depressed. She was tired. She just wanted it to end. I've been working hard, Mom, I said, leaning into her touch just enough to make her uncomfortable. Audits are exhausting. You have to look at every single number. You have to find every single lie. Her hand froze on my cheek. For a second, the mask slipped. I saw the panic flare in her pupils. But she recovered instantly. Well, tonight isn't about work. It's about Madison. And there she was. Madison. My younger sister, holding court in the center of the room. She was wearing a white dress that looked suspiciously bridal, and around her neck was a diamond choker. My breath hitched. That necklace wasn't hers. It was my grandmother's. It was specifically left to me in the will, the same will my parents had buried. Seeing it on her neck was the final confirmation. They hadn't just stolen my money. They had cannibalized my identity. Madison saw me staring and touched the diamonds, smirking. She raised her glass in a mock salute. She knew. She knew about the money laundering. She knew about the setup. She was ready to dance on my grave before I was even in it. Robert tapped a spoon against his glass. The room went silent. If everyone could gather round. He boomed, beaming like the benevolent patriarch. We have a very special toast to make. Sandra appeared at my elbow, holding 2 crystal flutes. One for her, one for me. The bubbles fizzed innocently in the light. Here, darling, she whispered, pressing the glass into my hand. Drink up. It's the good stuff. I took the glass. It felt heavy, cold, and final. I looked at the liquid. It looked exactly like champagne. But I knew better. I knew that dissolved inside was a lethal dose of cyclopentylamine, a chemical that mimics a heart attack, untraceable unless you know exactly what to look for. She watched me, her eyes hungry. She was waiting for me to drink. She was waiting for me to die so she could finally exhale. Not yet, Mom, I thought. The show is just starting. I watched the liquid disappear. Madison tilted her head back, exposing the long, elegant line of her neck, the neck currently wearing my grandmother's diamonds. She swallowed. Once. Twice. She lowered the glass, licking a drop of champagne from her lip. You're surprisingly sweet tonight, Charlotte, she said, her voice dripping with condensation and mockery. I guess you finally learned your place. I did, I said. My place is right here, watching you. She laughed, a tinkling, hollow sound that matched the music. But then, the laugh hitched. It wasn't a gasp. It was a hiccup, followed by a sharp intake of breath. Her hand flew to her chest. The crystal flute slipped from her fingers. The sound of expensive glass shattering on the marble floor cut through the string quartet like a gunshot. The music stopped abruptly. Madison swayed, her eyes, wide and confused, locked onto mine. "Charlotte?" she wheezed. I can't. Then, gravity took over. She didn't faint gracefully like they do in the movies. She crumpled. Her knees hit the floor with a sickening thud, followed by her torso. Her limbs jerked violent. Involuntary spasms that sent the shards of glass skittering across the floor. Foam gathered at the corners of her mouth. The room exploded. A scream ripped from the senator's wife. Guests scrambled back, knocking over chairs, spilling drinks. A circle of horrified silence opened up around my sister's convulsing body. But I wasn't looking at Madison. I was looking at Sandra. My mother stood frozen. Her face wasn't just pale. It was the color of old ash. She stared at the empty glass on the floor, then at her dying golden child. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She was trapped in a nightmare of her own engineering. She knew exactly what was happening. She knew the dosage. She knew the symptoms. She knew that cyclopentylamine shuts down the respiratory system within minutes. She wanted to scream for help. I could see the impulse firing in her eyes. But she couldn't. To call for help, to tell the paramedics what to treat, she would have to admit what was in the glass. She would have to admit she had just murdered her favorite daughter. So she did nothing. She stood there, paralyzed by the weight of her own sins, watching Madison gasp for air that wouldn't come. Robert reacted differently. He didn't look at Madison. He looked at me. His face twisted into a mask of pure, animalistic rage. He lunged across the space between us, grabbing my shoulders, his fingers digging into my flesh like talons. "What did you do?" he roared, shaking me. "You bitch. What did you give her?" The room went dead silent. Every eye turned to us. The grieving father. The evil sister. It was the narrative they wanted. It was the story they had prepared. Just with the wrong victim. I didn't struggle. I didn't pull away. I looked him dead in the eye. My voice calm, projecting clearly to the back of the room. "I didn't give her anything, Dad," I said. "I just handed her the glass Mom poured for me." Robert froze. His grip loosened. He looked at Sandra. She was still staring at the floor, trembling, her hands covering her mouth. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He looked back at Madison, who was now turning a terrifying shade of blue, her heels drumming a frantic rhythm against the floor. "Sandra," he whispered. It was a plea. "Tell them it's not true. Tell them you didn't do this." But Sandra couldn't speak. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. The guests were whispering now, pointing. The perfect facade was cracking, revealing the rot underneath. "Call 911, someone shouted from the crowd. "She's dying." I stepped back, smoothing the lapel of my jumpsuit. "You should listen to them, Dad," I said coldly. "She doesn't have much time. And neither do you." I didn't argue with him. I didn't defend myself. I just pulled my phone from my clutch and pressed a single button.